Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Well, good afternoon. It's a privilege to be with you today, and especially with you, my companions, my colleagues, my peers, as we walk into this Lenten journey together into Holy Week and beyond. Before I offer a few words, I want you to turn into your table mates and talk with each other over that painting that you have in front of you, that Busters Take and Eat. And I want you to identify 4 people. I want you to find Judas. I want you to find Peter. I want you to find John. And I want you to find yourself. You're not the one with the triangle. Right? And your table doesn't have to reach any type of agreement, but I want you to be able to offer a brief explanation to each other as to your interpretation of this painting, and I'll just give you a few minutes to do that. So talk away.
Why is Jesus so somber? Or I'm the guy with the finger to his chin going.
Well, good. If I could have your attention again, we'll swing back to this in a bit. And you're right, Calvin, there is no right answers. It is a busy time of the year for us pastors, particularly because we feel the intensity of the biblical narrative ganging up against us. And what I mean by this is that us pastors in particular often feel the weight of responsibility in ensuring that in this age of increasing biblical illiteracy, we deliver the goods, expounding the truths for those who need to hear it. The challenge, of course, is that the Gospels are weighted. They are weighed against us in that we're not asked to speak on a couple of verses, as might happen throughout the rest of the year, but on vast chapters of theologically profound, thought-provoking, emotionally laden, ancient literature, yearning and beckoning to be told with vibrancy and relevancy and beauty and wit. Most churches will sweep aside all of the pastor's responsibilities of leadership and mission and caregiving and administration and communication and outreach and mentoring and discipling and counseling, so that the pastor has complete and undivided attention to commune with God, ready his or her heart, and prepare themselves and their congregations for Easter. No. Yeah, just kidding. I'm sure that your day planner and schedule has been as complex as mine. Only in the last 2 weeks, I can tell you, I've been rating papers for both provincial and national boards upon which I sit that have taken too many teleconferences for my liking. I've traveled to Chilliwack to provide consolation and pastoral care to my brother-in-law dying of acute myeloid leukemia and crying with my sister. I completed reading a book, and am in the middle of a number of others. I'm writing my own book. I participate in a weekly cross-Canada book club. I'm mentoring a pastor who's serving on the mainland. I comforted a new widow, a broken husband, and intervened in the life of a former refugee who's now straddled with debt because they come from a country that doesn't have credit cards, and now he's found himself in trouble. I've led worship committee and preachers' corner meetings. I've done some vision casting regarding the adoption of a financial literacy program targeted at single-parent immigrant families. Last night and this morning, I was leading a small group Bible study and a men's prayer breakfast. I've intervened in a troubled marriage. I've taught an English learning language class. I've done home visitations. I've built litanies and Sunday morning services and led worship teams and of course preached and prayed like mad all along the way. This amidst medical appointments and cooking and gardening and walking and cycling and mourning my Canucks missing the playoffs again. Being a husband, going on day trips with my wife Yvonne, being a concerned dad whose 29-year-old daughter is going to be going through a below-the-knee amputation of her right foot in a few weeks, and being a papa to a 3.5-year-old and a 7-month-old who together with their mom live with Yvonne and I. I'm not unique. That's just my last 2 weeks. You have your own cadences. It's a good life though, isn't it? It's a blessed life. It's the abundant life that Jesus speaks about in John 10:10, where he says, "The thief comes only to kill, steal, and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." It's the life that Paul talks about in Ephesians 2:10, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." And so if we're honest, we confess that we are privileged. We are some of the most privileged people on the planet because scores of hardworking men and women sacrifice and invest their money every month to pay our salaries so that we might have sanctified time to read and study and meditate and reflect and teach and preach and pray and sing and lead and serve and comfort the sorrowful and befriend the lonely. It's an astounding gig. We are paid to do what we are called to do and would want to do, regardless of whether or not we got paid or not, if that were economically feasible, which it's not. So God be praised all the more whenever we do get paid. Ministry is not a job. It is not a lifestyle. It is a life. And many of us know that truth experientially, but we don't often hear it, and we don't hear it enough actually said out loud so that it becomes legitimated. We are called by the Spirit of God. We've set aside numerous other occupational opportunities. This is the life chosen for us. This is the life we have chosen. You and I were built with a fire in our gut. We've had countless people sacrifice time, money, and energy so that we could go to school and be trained and be resourced. We've had our gifts and our talents, our hearts, our callings confirmed. We have vast numbers of people praying for us, praying that God is going to bless us, inspire us, touch us, lead us, guide us. We are the objects of God's love and attention. We are the objects of the church's love and affection. There has been a massive kingdom investment in each one of our lives. And knowing that, ironically, does not always bring comfort, though it is comforting and encouraging. Being the recipient of so much spiritual attention can actually deepen our anxiety to measure up, to prove ourselves worthy, to convince ourselves that we're able. And brothers and sisters, that's a dark Lenten hole to scurry down at this time of the year. But ours is the domain of public scrutiny. We are actors on stage, and many of us have honed these skills to shield our people from what's really going on in our souls. Our congregations, though, they don't need theater. Our churches need and deserve shepherds who serve with gratitude, humility, authenticity, and transparency. Even when we feel we're doing our best work, you and I know that we're going to have our detractors. It's not uncommon, though their voices are rarely welcomed. With alarming frequency, pastors speak about having malcontents, offering a dissonant spirit among the people. Critics are rarely in short supply, and it doesn't need to be overt, because congregations are highly evolved organisms that can serve death by 1,000 small cuts. Like the patronizing smile from across the room that communicates without words, "You'll never be good enough." Or the otherwise kind person who takes your hand after the service, their voice echoing through the foyer saying, "Pastor, today I really understood what you were trying to say." But hey, we're storytellers, right? And we're not always swinging for the fences. Sometimes we deliberately lay down a bunt in order to advance the kingdom of God. The Seattle Mariners just honored the recently retired Ichiro Suzuki by showcasing him in a couple of games in his native Japan, where he was met with great applause, of course, and rightly so, because he was a spectacular player, an excellent fielder, a strategic batter who knew how to bat to the strength of his team. Ichiro would prefer to have the bases loaded up and bring home 3 or 4 runs rather than crack a solo over the wall. He knew how to play to the strength of his team. He did not pretend to be what he wasn't. I did that, though. In my younger years, looking back now, I pretended a lot. I was always swinging for the fences, especially during this Lenten season without the assistance of the lectionary, which back then I thought was some evil mainline tool, but now is my salvation. I felt like the congregation needed to hear everything about Jesus' Passion, Last Supper, teaching of the high priestly prayer, Gethsemane, the arrest, the court proceedings, the torture, the trials, more torture, the crucifixion, the burial. Everything! Every year, all the time. They needed it every year, and it was my responsibility to tell them what they already knew, and most likely in a way that they didn't care to hear. In hindsight, it was embarrassing. And I've repented and prayed forgiveness many times over those first years. I was inexperienced, yes, but there was also an arrogance of heart at play. I had bought into the lie that God had downloaded truth into my mental hard drive while depriving my people of the gospel. That's a lie. Listen, I want to plead with you all, especially those starting out in pastoral ministry, to pull back, to step back from the enormity of the story that's before us. As you walk this Lenten road, I encourage you to pick a character. Pick a few verses. Offer your people a slice instead of the whole pie. Everyone's trying to lose weight. Establish for yourself healthier boundaries than what I had when I was young, so that you have longevity in ministry and you can acquire a deep sense of yourself that is not dependent upon performing an act or pretending to be something you are not. Now, Peter is our object lesson and patron saint in this regard. Peter allows us to enter the Lenten journey with authenticity. He is entirely reliable because he is entirely relatable. His undisciplined tongue exposes so many personal, unfulfilled needs in his life that it saves us the work of translation. We don't need a degree to be able to figure out his actions betray a deep-felt need to be something he wasn't. Like so many of us, he flaps his lips. "Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and to death." He commits to that which he cannot entrust himself. Like Peter, we often speak before we think. We act before we consider the consequences. We pretend to be great when we're not. We may choose to believe our own press releases when in reality people are feeding us silent smiles from across the room and politely telling us they understood us today. Many of my favorite one of my favorite images is of Peter sleeping in Gethsemane. The Passover meal had accomplished its purpose. The stomach drew blood from the brain. It's late, it's dark, it's quiet, there's nothing going on. It's been a long day, a long journey, a long year. Sleep. The Lord wants and expects prayer, but exhaustion comes and overpowers Peter at the most inopportune time. And like Peter, when we're aroused, we too can make wild, undisciplined swings in the dark that bring great harm with an even more dangerous weapon, the cloak of pastoral authority propped up by the pulpit that camouflages a poorly prepared sermon that attempts to say too much. Like Peter, we too can make promises we have no power to keep. We may sound prophetic and courageous and inspiring in the moment, but our follow-through is invariably weaker than our words. We too can be given to self-loathing, certainly full of conviction with cockcrow in our ears. We too can, at the worst possible time, separate ourselves from friends and colleagues. We too can delve deep into the dark places of the heart where only Christ can extract us. Peter is our Lenten hero, awkward, intimate, and exhausted. And together with him we quiver on this Lenten road, clutching the Lord's robe, peering out from behind Jesus to see, to hear, to smell, to sense that which is coming towards us at incalculable speed. Peter sets the table for the Last Supper. And yes, we have Paul's stunning treatise in 1 Corinthians as to who and who should not be at the table. But let me ask you, who is at the table? Who is at the table? You have it right in front of you. Who is at the table? Look at Ned Buster's picture again. Who does Jesus have at the table? Had you sorted out who was who? I hope you had fun with that. There is Judas in there, the betrayer, who's sharing their guac bowl with the Lord. There's Peter with his enormous needs and insecurities. Peter the impetuous, the sleeper, the one who wild flings his arms, this is the lip-flapping denier. And then there's the nameless 10, a bunch of deserters, save John, whose love for his master compelled his trembling body to take shelter in the company of women at the cross. Surely he would be safe in the company of women. And did you find yourself? Now, I heard how you were engaged with each other. I thought there would be a lot more arguing as to who's most important, who's in the picture, who's facing in, who's facing out, who's distracted, who's fearful, who would rather not be there, who's confused, who still has a question, whose face merely occupies negative space, and where you fit in this motley band. I'm going to say again, it's good to be with you on this Lenten journey together. Who in their right mind is ready for Easter? That's a legitimate question that I ask. Easter comes upon us mortal earth dwellers who sit at this table. It comes upon the sorrowful and the depleted and the grieving and those pained and those still chewing on the Passover, those with dried sweat on their skin, those with the sight of torches etched in their corneas, those whose hearing is dulled by the roar of the crowds and whose throats are raw with our own contributions to the cacophony. It's good to be on this Lenten journey with you, together. Let us be kind to ourselves. It's awkward, it's intimate, it's exhausting, this journey to the cross. But it's so good to have you on the road together. Thanks be to God.